Now, this is because we are following an entire push strategy per se. Since demand is not coming to us, so we'll have to get to the demand. And for that, some amount of data collection is necessary, and some amount of cold emailing is necessary as well. And this cold emailing brings us to the second part, which is sales. So essentially, we are pitching our services, and then when the other party, may it be an investor or just a strategic partner, interns are given a lot of responsibility relating to a deal. And in most cases, you would either be working on an academic project, which is a made up project kind of thing. And sometimes you might be able to do some sort of data crunching. But in this particular internship that we are working on, the responsibilities were pretty much real, and so were the stakeholders.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have Kovid Raj with us today. Kovid, would you like to start this webcast with your introduction?
Yeah. So hi, I'm Kovid Raj Paudel. So actually, I had interned with Jatin earlier, and we are in the same internship. And I'm also a student at IIM Indore, and I'm currently pursuing MBA there.
So, Kovid, tell us about your experience with the investment bank.
So, as per my experience that I had so far, the internship experience in the firm that I did, it was a pretty fast-paced one, and we had a lot of autonomy in the way we chose our roles and the way we actually went about doing the responsibilities that were assigned to us. So typically, it's not the case that grad level interns are given a lot of responsibility relating to a deal. And in most cases, you would either be working on an academic project, which is a made up project kind of thing. And sometimes you might be able to do some sort of data crunching. But in this particular internship that we are working on, the responsibilities were pretty much real, and so were the stakeholders. So, as an example, we worked on bringing a new technology in terms of clean energy to India, a deal which is still ongoing. And we also helped in raising debt for a couple of startups. So, yes, the work is pretty exciting, but it is a lot of work, and you need to commit a lot of time as well as effort into it.
Okay, so without taking any names, can you tell us about what were the kind of what was the average ticket size? What was the deals? What was the size of the deals on which you worked on?
So the deal sizes were quite varied, to be honest. So it actually depends on the type of deal that is being brought up on the table, as well as the industry that we are dealing with. So we had a deal which was as large as 3,000 crores. It was a distressed asset deal, and in fact, the deal is still ongoing. It hasn't been finalized yet. And on the other hand, we had smaller deals beginning right from, let's say, 20 to 30 crores as well. So that is the range of deals in which we were working on.
Okay. Okay, that is so. How do we go about from someone who is not at all from the industry and who wants to, who is aspiring to be in the industry?
Okay.
He's doing it, and probably he got his inspiration from Harvey Specter, or maybe some web series, because that's what they do. They watch web
Yeah.
series and movies and things like that. So, how long does an average deal takes to close? Because Harvey Specter does it every episode. Like, he walks into the room, he talks, and he negotiates, he dominates the other side, and that's how it's done from their perspective. So in real world, what is it like? Yeah.
So while shows like Suits might be a great inspiration for having deals in general and M&A deals in particular, but I feel that there's a lot of work that goes on in the background as well. So while you might only see the negotiator or the key mouthpiece for the company, which in this case is Harvey Specter, there's a lot of data crunching, there's a lot of analysis that goes on the background. And when you are joining this industry, you do not, and I repeat, you do not get to join as a Harvey Specter. You rather get to join as someone from the very bottom ranks, and you'll have to work your way up. And that involves a very sound mind in terms of analytics, number crunching, as well as your overall, let's say, macro mindset. So if you want to, so I feel that if you want to enter into this industry, your quants, like basic number crunching, and your ability to make insights out of numbers, and be sure in what you are suggesting and in the patterns that you are seeing in the data, has to be good. And this is something which I feel there are a lot of resources online, but you will have to devote your time and effort into learning them.
Okay. So from my experience, because I also am a part of that organization,
Yeah.
a lot of the decision making power, uh, if you can say that, was
Yeah.
delegated to us as interns. So how do you make decisions? Because there is some degree of accountability in that role, and yeah, I mean, there's pressure, there are stakes, and these are real businessmen we are talking about. These are real
Yeah.
deals. So at that level, we wouldn't you I mean, as an intern, we would probably look for some guidance, but there was not any in this case. However, so how do you make decisions? How do you go about making decisions? What to do?
So I would answer this from my experience, and this is not limited just to the internship, but in other high stakes situations as well. So every time I find myself in such a high stakes situation where there is very limited overseeing per se, so the best thing to do is to take ownership of the issue. So once you take complete ownership of the issue, based on the constraints that might be there, obviously. So once you take complete ownership of the issue, you'll have to have an idea of everything that you're going to do, and you'll have to know, and you'll have to convince yourself why you're doing what you're doing. So you're not just carrying out the orders or carrying out the wishes of someone else. You are doing the whole deal by yourself. So one, it leads to a lot of extra work on your part, because you'll have to determine what you have to do, and you'll have to be pretty sure on why you're doing it. But on the other hand, because you are leading all the effort, so there's a lot of increased satisfaction that comes out at the end of it, because you can say that you have like pushed through this deal, and you have actually like brought about this deal right from the beginning to completion.
Okay, so there's one more question I would imagine as a viewer. I would like to ask is, what is the deal flow like? Like you're with your team. You're on call, especially at these extraordinary times. Virtually, you're connected to your team, and you're trying to build a database. Now you're trying to pitch the companies. Okay, so let's say I got a response from some company, okay, some startup or some company abroad,
Okay.
overseas or in India. So what's the next step like? How the deal flows?
So I would like to take a step further and like break down what we essentially do. So I feel there are three or four parts to what we do. The first is basic data collection, the crutch part of the work, if I may say so, which basically involves looking at various sources through which we can get contacts for people. Now, this is because we are following an entire push strategy per se. Since demand is not coming to us, so we'll have to get to the demand. And for that, some amount of data collection is necessary, and some amount of cold emailing is necessary as well. And this cold emailing brings us to the second part, which is sales. So basically, essentially, we are pitching our services, and then when the other party may be an investor or just a strategic partner, once they buy into it, then the kind of main work begins, where we analyze, that is the research work. Like we analyze what is in the deal all about, like what is the client asking for, why are they asking for it, what are the terms that they might feel favorable, and what are their targets. So once we have an idea of these, once we know what are the deliverables that our client wants, then we get to work on that. Like then again, I think that the whole cycle repeats again. We know that this is the target that we have to meet for our client, and again we go to the data collection stage, then the selling or the pitch stage, where we again pitch what our client wants to the new company or the new target that we are reaching out to. Then again, there is another round of analysis to confirm that whether we have reached out to the current like the correct partner or not. And then finally, the negotiation part, in which we try and bring about both parties together and work out the finer integrities of the deal, the finer details of the deal. So in this case, and finally, there is a mandate signed or there is the closure of the deal. Now there are a few technicalities in the deal process. First of all, when we agree, when we get to know a client and we need some amount of data from them, which otherwise they might not be willing to share, because data is very important. And like, if it gets into the wrong hands, obviously it might not be a very good scenario for the client or for any company, in fact. So we need to sign an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement for that before we can actually get hold of the data and run our research through it. Then another thing is we need to sign a mandate once the client agrees to having us as their business advisor, so that now we are working as per the wishes of our client, and the mandate is an official confirmation that yes, this is the work we are doing for the client and we have been authorized to do so. And after all that is done, in the final M&A stage, again there are many legal and other recourses that we have to take. There are many final technicalities that have to be looked into. So in fact, the deal completion takes a lot of time. I would say it definitely takes a few months and might even stretch to a few years depending on the deal size and the deal sector and even the partners involved. So that's it in my view.
Okay, yeah, that was very insightful. One more question.
Yeah.
Uh, Given the COVID situation, from having no internship to having an internship in an investment bank, I'm assuming from the being said that you're a master's student yourself. You're
Yeah.
pursuing your masters from a college. You must have There must have been days where you must have felt some gaps from the knowledge that you have and the practice that goes on to the real world. So how do you go about filling those gaps? Because now there's no teacher and student sessions going on. If you have queries but you are in the battle and you're in the ring, so how do you fill those gaps by yourself?
Yeah. So when we talk about filling those gaps between what we have been taught or what we have learned about in theory and what actually goes on in reality, I feel that there are a number of formal as well as informal mediums. First of all, because of the internet, there is a lot of material available online. We can easily go and cross check anything that we want. We just have to make sure that what we are looking for is relevant and it is actually true. The second thing that we can do is, in any place that we are reaching, like we are working on as an intern or even as an employee, there would be other co-workers, there would be other seniors who might be willing to help us, and that is one very good source of learning on the job. Then, because I'm a college student, I also have the access of information and knowledge from the college in another avenue which was open for me. So I had access to some of the databases, I had access to the professors. So even they were very helpful during these times, because everyone was pitching out to help the students who were like feeling a little bit out of place. So I feel these formal and informal sources of information would still be around, even if you are not in college, but you will still have the internet. You'll still have people on LinkedIn who would be willing to help, and you'll still have, let's say, the colleagues in the place that you're working on.
Okay. Okay. What are the emerging trends that you have seen during your internship? Like solar energy you mentioned. So there are deals, there are companies who are looking for investors, and there are investors who are willing to invest in companies like that. So what are similar? Do you know? Can you mention any similar trends which, in your opinion, will make huge in the coming years?
So a couple of trends which I felt were working in the industry in which I was a part of were, first of all, there was a lot of push towards the sectors in which there was some sort of government and regulatory, let's say, oversight or support expected. So clean energy being one such area where there is still a bit of government support in India based on the renewable image that is associated with it. And the second thing which I felt is like during that during COVID time, if I may say so, the investors are now willing to park their cash somewhere because ultimately they also have to make their investments, but they are now more risk averse. So there is, while there are a lot of investors willing to invest in good businesses, but the business quality checks that are there are more rigorous. The proof of concept or the proof of business that they want is a little bit on the higher side or the safer side as compared to earlier. So, and even they are being more cautious in terms of the overall terms that are being laid out for uh, giving out capital. So while the amount of capital that is available might still be the same or might have decreased only by a certain amount, the oversight that has gone into it, and the bullishness, if I may say so, of the investors has definitely decreased.
Okay, so as an investor myself, when I invest in shares, I look at green companies like clean energy and solar energy has been around for quite some time, and there
Yeah,
is some tension between the manufacturers, producers, and the discom, the distribution partners. The distribution partners feel that there are not enough margins for them to find those deals that lucrative. So the government is introducing some policies, but what do you feel? How will it go? Uh, Solar energy has been around for quite some time. It's been a decade or something like that.
yeah.
So, what do you feel? What are the insights from the industry?
So one peculiar trend that we see in the solar industry is generally the PPAs or the power purchase agreements are signed for, let's say, 15 years or 25 years. And this technology itself has seen a lot of changes. So while initially the cost per kilowatt hour, let's say, was around 10, 12, and even 15 rupees, and right now, because of the added competition, and because of the cheaper machinery and the better technology that's available now, the price has decreased quite significantly to less than 4 rupees per kilowatt hour. And this is almost comparable to the hydro power prices per kWh that we have. So while I feel that the industry as a whole has become very competitive, but because of the very low margins and the high number of players that we have, I feel that there might be a wave of consolidation. Again, the views are totally personal, and this might or might not happen in the future, but that's what I think.
Okay, okay. So we have touched down around quite some topics here. So one question that I want to ask you is, uh, being the intermediary, you are connecting the investors to investees. So
Yeah.
there are some risks of deal falling apart, and there's a lot of confidential data of the companies and investors. So how do you go about mitigating that risk?
Used about the type of risks that we are talking about. So, are we talking about the type of regulatory risks? Are we talking about the risk of a deal falling apart, or are we talking about?
Yes,
Okay,
the
so
risk of the deal falling apart.
I feel that risk is a very real one, and in fact, that is a very accepted risk in the financial services industry, particularly in M&A. I feel that for every 100 mandates, or let's say for a very large number of mandates that are signed, only a few actually go ahead and translate into an successful M&A. And even once an M&A is done, the amount of companies or the amount of post-merger entities that are actually better off than what they were before the merger is an even smaller amount. So I feel that industry is quite a risk-prone industry in that regard. When two companies from very different values and very different set of strengths and weaknesses and very different cultures are merging together, there is always a very real risk of value being destructed instead of being created. So for that, like we can always have some safeguards in terms of the legal thresholds, like in terms of legal redressal mechanisms or in terms of economic goals per se. If we talk about it from the perspective of an investor, if we talk from our perspective again, the NDA and all other legal redressal mechanisms, we can have some checks and balances, but in the end, the risks are real and they are going to be there. And I think the only way forward is to be more through in terms of our data analysis and how we take and choose the partners.
Okay, Okay, so if you can tell us something related to the roadblocks that you felt, that you faced, that you've experienced during your internship. What were the roadblocks in the process?
So there were quite a few roadblocks. For one, since while there were a lot of interns that we had, so the amount of communication when we are dealing with equals per se, because all of us were equals in the sense that all of us were interns, and while there was a POC, or there were a few who were responsible for the official communication, but between equals there is often a mismatch between, let's say, the work that is being assigned and the work that is actually being realized. So there is a bit of lack on that part. Another thing is miscommunication. So when we have a large number of people working on deals, in our case we had quite a bit, and over 100 people in fact. So that in that scenario, I feel managing communications becomes quite tricky, and therefore a little bit more oversight could have actually helped.
Hi everyone, I hope you guys liked the video, and if you know someone who makes a similar content or has a story that needs to be shared, please feel free to reach out to us at crosslifenetworks@gmail.com. And if you have an interesting opinion that you'd like to share, please do that in the comment section below. Subscribe the channel, and I will see you in the next webcast.